Good evening. I'll call the May 10th, 2023 meeting of the Manitou Springs Planning Commission to order. First item, I'll call roll. Commissioner Armstrong. Commissioner Latimer.
Present.
Commissioner Storm.
Present.
Commissioner Graybill.
Present.
Commissioner Wilson.
Present.
Okay, and I'm Commissioner Delwich. Next item is approval of the minutes. I guess we're going to delay that because they're not ready. So we'll move on. Next, we have public comment on non-agenda items. And this is for public comments intended for items not already on the agenda. Public comment is limited to 3 minutes per person. When you're called upon, you'll be asked to state your full name and address for the record. And it's not an interactive question and answer form, but rather a time where you can state your comments on a particular item or issue. And when you get to the 3 minute mark, I'll ask you to wrap up. So with that, is anybody interested in public comment? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on. Next, we go to unfinished business, and I'll start by describing the process we use. I'll call an item for consideration, and planning staff will describe the applicant's request and their findings and recommendations based on the application. Following that, the applicant will have an opportunity to state their case. And during this process, Planning Commission may ask questions regarding the application. And following that, we'll open the floor for public comment, at which time anyone in the audience is entitled to address the issue under consideration. And following that, we'll close the public comment portion of the hearing, and we'll deliberate and take action on the item, either vote to approve, recommend approval, vote to approve or deny, or possibly table an item if we need more information or we need to delay it to a further time in the future. And as we go through, we follow the guidelines of the Land Use and Development Code. We're not making new laws or legislating. We're strictly interpreting what's in the code. So with that, are there any conflicts or ex parte communications to disclose? Well, seeing none, we'll just move on. First item of business is short-term rental 2303, vacation rental at 152 El Paso Boulevard, Ray Thomas, owner.
Great. Thank you, commissioners. For the record, Kelsey Lanham, planning technician. This presentation is for STR 2303 short-term rental permit for 152 El Paso Boulevard, requested by the owner, Ray Thomas. So this property is zoned general residential. The property has a main house and an accessory dwelling unit. The ADU is the proposed short-term rental and is known as 152 El Paso Boulevard Unit 2. I will mention in the staff report, I did state that the ADU was on the north eastern part of the property, is actually the northwestern. So I apologize for that confusion. But the ADU is on top of the northwestern garage and is a 1-bedroom, 1-bathroom unit. 2 parking spaces will be available for renters if approved. One will be in the garage that's below the ADU, and then one is in the driveway. So these are both the same pictures of the site plan, just more zoomed in. The property is directly across from Fields Park, and all other adjacent properties are zoned general residential as well. So this plan depicts the 2 parking spaces. So like I said, one will be in the garage that's directly below the proposed short-term rental, and then the other is on the driveway directly outside of the proposed short-term rental. So the photo on the left shows the main house along with the proposed STR. And then the picture on the right is just a more zoomed in photo of the proposed STR. This document will be provided to renters and all other information regarding fire, burn restrictions, water restrictions, etc. If approved, this specific document right here just shows the evacuation route and the location of smoke detectors and carbon monoxide detectors. The planning department did receive 1 comment from an immediate neighbor of this property in support. The email would not convert to a PDF, so I printed it out for the commissioners to review. The property owner did acknowledge the short-term rental permit applicability checklist. The property owner signed the primary residence affidavit and acknowledges owner occupancy applies once a short-term rental permit and a business license is obtained. The property is now within 500 feet of another STR, and the property owner acknowledges that the short-term rental permit, if approved, is only valid for 1 year and must renew their business license annually through the city of Manitou Springs in order to remain active and compliant. And here is the motion language.
Any questions for the staff? Okay, thank you. At this time, the applicant could come to the table, state your name and address for the record. You need to, you have to get that real close, like within about 3 feet of you, and 3 inches, and hit the little speaker icon in the middle, and the light will turn green.
My name is Ray Thomas. I live at 152 El Paso Boulevard, Manitou.
Okay, so the floor is yours to add anything you want or state any thoughts.
They've covered it very well. I don't have anything to add to this.
Okay, or any questions for the applicant? Okay, well, thank you then. If we need more, we'll call you back.
Okay.
And now it's time for public comment. If anybody would like to comment on this item, just step to the table and state your name and address for the record.
Hi, Mary Cowdery, 11 Delaware Road, Manitou Springs. Is there, we had a moratorium on short-term rentals and that ended.
That's correct.
Is there a plan to reinstate one?
Reinstate a moratorium?
Yes.
Not that I'm aware of.
Um, do you see that we could become saturated with these short-term rentals?
If you're speaking about this particular item,
Uh-huh.
yeah, no, we have a limit of no more than 3% or 2% of the
2%?
residential units, which is roughly 56 units. And they have to be geographically separated by a radius of 500 feet.
Okay, I just wanted,
And,
know.
and at this point, I think there's kind of like about 42, it sort of bounces back and forth. And there's probably not enough separation to ever get to that 2% number.
Okay. All right, I just needed to know about the moratorium.
Okay,
Thanks.
thank you. Okay, would anybody else like to comment on this?
Chair Delwich, there is somebody online who
Okay,
maybe wants
thank
to
you.
comment on this.
okay. If you're online, if you could
Yes.
unmute and, state your name and address.
I'm
Ken,
sorry.
I have no comments.
There's an individual named Kendrick Cowdrey. He's the individual who said that he doesn't have any comments. And then we have a second individual, Debbie Duran, who maybe has comments on this particular agenda item, which is 152 El Paso.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, we
Yes.
can.
Yes.
Okay, yes. Is this about the address at 49 Delaware?
No, this is 152 El Paso Boulevard. 49 Delaware will be coming up next on the agenda.
Oh, okay. I'll wait for that. Okay, thank you. I'll listen in.
Okay, it's any other comment on this one? Okay, then at this time, we'll close the public comment portion of the hearing and deliberate.
Well, as all of the requirements in our city code have been met, I am in favor of approving the short-term rental.
Is that a motion? Yes.
I move to approve short-term rental 2303 at 152 El Paso Boulevard, based upon the findings that the request meets the review criteria for granting a short-term rental permit.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any more discussion? Okay, then let's vote. All in favor? And that's unanimous. So that one is approved. So now, next item of business is short-term rental 2304. Vacation rental at 49 Delaware, Peter Salet, owner.
Thank you, Commissioners. For the record, Aaron Ringsred, Planner 2. I am presenting STR 2304, which is a short-term rental permit for vacation rental at 49 Delaware Road. The request is being made by the owner, Peter Salet. The request is for a short-term rental operation at 49 Delaware Road. This is an area that is zoned general residential. The lot is surrounded by residential uses, as well as an RS 5000 residential suburban by El Paso County. There are potentially 2 bedrooms that would be rented and 2 parking spots available for those bedrooms. This is a picture, so kind of a clarification of what had been in the staff report. I mentioned that the road was no outlet. You can get through at the end, but there is a sign that is for local residents only, because it does get quite narrow when you turn the corner here. So this is a site plan of the residence where there are showing.
Yeah, we're not seeing the graphics.
Sorry, 1 second. It looks like my internet disconnected, so that's why. we go. I think it just reconnected, so let's try this again. So this was the image when I was clarifying that there is an outlet on Delaware Road to curve around. But there is a sign posted there, for sort of a warning because it does get quite narrow as you turn the corner here. And then this is the site plan for 49 Delaware Road. It's surrounded by residential. This area here on the southern side is where it's the El Paso County designation because it's at the edge of the Manitou Springs city limits. There are 2 parking spots available to the renters, and then there is a trash area as well. There is this is a site plan showing the points of egress in case of a fire, but the applicant has also written a thorough sort of rules list for the guests as well. The property owner has fulfilled all the criteria for this submittal by acknowledging the short-term rental permit applicability checklist. The property owner signed the primary residence affidavit and acknowledges the owner occupancy applies once a short-term rental permit and business license is obtained. And the property is not within 500 feet of another short-term rental property. So they're applying for a 1-year short-term rental permit. The criteria for approval are that it does not adversely impact the surrounding uses and does not encroach upon traditional neighborhood characteristics. We have not received any public comments at this time. However, we did receive a phone call requesting directions on how to participate remotely, which we provided. This is the motion language to approve or approve with conditions or deny or postpone STR 2304. Thank you.
Any questions for staff?
Just to confirm, you didn't have any staff conditions, correct? Okay, because the way that's written is,
I'll
Okay, just-
I'll take out the staff, just
All right,
conditions if
okay,
you guys have
just
conditions.
checking, thanks.
Other questions? Okay, the applicant can come to the table now and state your name and address for the record.
Peter Slat, 49 Delaware Road. Good evening to the board, neighbors, and unfamiliar faces. My name is Peter, and my wife Taylor, who unfortunately couldn't make it tonight due to taking care of the children. Really appreciate the time to review our application. We've lived in Manitou for about 6 years and have wanted to turn our home into a short-term rental due to just being between here and Fort Worth, us both transitioning careers into going to school. But this will remain our primary residence. To elaborate on the parking spaces and the amount of people, just talking to neighbors and also giving it a lot of forethought, we would actually like to reduce it to just renting out 1 bedroom with the house and including 1 parking space, just to not be invasive to the neighborhood or the neighbors. Like I said, we do intend on keeping this our primary residence as required and keeping it our home forever. So this is kind of our way into helping that become possible. We've come up with strict guidelines and to maintain the house and local and not be invasive to the neighbors surrounding us. And we would love to keep the neighborhood as pure as we can. And like I said, this is just our way of continuing to keep the house forever for our kids and whatnot. So if there's any questions or oppositions, I can happily answer from any board members or neighbors, but that's all.
Any questions?
I do. You mentioned Fort Worth. Do your kids go to school locally or in Texas?
Our kids are 1 and 10 weeks old.
Oh, okay.
So
So
they're still pretty young. But we plan to live here for a long time. But
Oh, okay.
my wife is in school, online school, and then I'm also transitioning to online continuing education for a master's. So
Cool. So do you live here now?
yes, yes.
Okay.
We've lived in the house since 2020, in the neighborhood and have loved it and never want to move, obviously, because it's a great property. So, but we understand it's tight and it's a very quirky area with wildlife and whatnot. So it's definitely we'd like to try for this to help keep the home. So
Thank you.
Just to clarify, you're going to school remotely, but living here while you're going to school? I'm a little confused from your statement.
Neither of us are from here. Originally, I work here now. We have a lot of family in Texas, which is why with a 1-year-old and a 10-week-old right now, it's nice to split our time and during the busy season kind of be between here and Fort Worth, as it's only about a 7 or 8 hour drive. So it's just having family to help locally. So having this as a short-term rental, it kind of allows us to be between the two and also pay the bills and whatnot, and keep the house.
Thank you. Any other questions? David?
I'm a bit confused. So you've changed from renting out 2-bedroom separately to only 1?
Correct. After, like I said, after giving it thought, it's a very narrow road, a tight road, and we only have one official parking space at our house. And so to not make it confusing to renting to the renters, and not being invasive to neighbors with parking, we would only like to keep it to 1 bedroom. Because it's also a very small house, so I would like to preserve the house with minimal 2 to 4 guests, and so like that was our biggest thing, is parking and preserving the house. We don't.
So you would have 1 renter at a time.
Correct.
And would you at times occupy the house while you rented, or?
Yes, like I said, I mean, this allows us to be to keep the house and be between here and still go to school, and our kids love it here, and obviously it's a beautiful place to raise them. So this is our way of kind of making it work.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Salata, I just wanted to clarify that you know about the owner occupancy requirements between splitting your time into locations.
Correct. Yes, it's I believe 180 days or 189 days here and a max of 180 days to be rented out. And I don't know if the board wants to clarify the rules to clarify that for any neighbors with concerns, but I feel like that is some concern, that getting a short-term rental permit is there are guidelines, and it is strict with the limited amount of days rented out per year, and also parking spaces and maximum guests per parking space and whatnot. So
Hannah, did you want to clarify the rental days?
Yeah, thank you, Chair Delwich. For the record, Hannah Van Nimwegen, Planning Director. So the code says that the property owner has to occupy the property for at least 185 days a year, which would leave a maximum rental of 180 per year.
Yeah, and I believe the minimum is 25 days a year. Is that correct?
That's correct. So the minimum is 21 days per year.
When you're not on site, who is going to manage this?
we have a property manager through I have I guess a friend and acquaintance that has worked with Airbnbs in the Colorado Springs area, Western Colorado Springs area. And we're waiting to follow through with, property man. We're not in any rush to rent the house out at the moment. So we're waiting to, if we can secure the short-term rental application to start working with a property manager and maintaining the property that way.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, thanks. If you can sit, and if we have more questions, we'll bring you back.
Thank you.
Okay, now the public comment portion of this hearing is open. If anybody would like to speak, just step up and state your name and address for the record. You need to push the button in the middle there.
Mary Cowdery, 11 Delaware Road. My question is, who is going to monitor the number of days that a person's there and not?
Yeah.
So this would be based, or we would launch an investigation upon a complaint. So if the neighbors are our greatest resource in instances like this. So if there were a situation where someone was suspicious that someone was in violation of the owner occupancy, then we would proceed with a code enforcement case.
Yeah, it seems a little not very neighborly, like it shouldn't be our job to monitor this arrangement. So I just wanted to state that. I might have more things to say, but that was my first concern. Thanks.
Okay, thank you.
Are we there? My name is Pamela Howard and I live at 325 Oklahoma Road, Delaware, and Oklahoma.
Just get a little bit closer.
Okay.
Yeah.
Delaware and Oklahoma basically form a loop. The neighborhood is very, very congested. And the roads it's a 1-lane road, 2-way. So it's very difficult for people, outsiders, to navigate our neighborhood. I think because it's in the historic district, I think, we live in one of those neighborhoods that is harder to live in than a lot of the other ones, like say the previous rental application. So my concern is going to be primarily with the amount of traffic that this brings in, and the people who come in are not familiar with the way the neighborhood kind of works. We presently have one neighbor who is doing some renovations and it's a mess. I mean, they're bringing trucks up there. There's parking problems with that and going around that. The other thing that's a major concern for me is the wildlife. We have regular visitations by bears and foxes and raccoons, and there's just a lot of wildlife up there. And deer, tons of deer. And I just don't really trust people who are not familiar with that kind of activity going on at any given time. I mean, last week we had 2 different bears in one night. There's just a lot of activity. I just don't feel like that's prudent for us to be having people who are just not familiar with how this neighborhood works. It's already congested enough. Everybody that lives there has their own little bit of parking. I do appreciate that they would bring it down to only one car to, for parking, but I just don't really trust people who are outsiders to really handle this neighborhood kind of appropriately. What if they're really afraid of bears? What if they're really, it's just, I just feel like, what if they violate the rules and put out the trash and here come the bear? Things like that. I just don't really feel like it's very prudent. And so I think that's one thing. And plus, if it's in the winter, Oklahoma and Delaware are notorious for having just problems with plowing. There's just a running complaint with how the roads are maintained in the winter. It's very difficult to, there's hills leading up to Delaware, leading up to that particular home. So I mean, it's not easy to navigate in the winter, especially when, you know, the roads are slick, they haven't been adequately maintained, which, like I said, is commonplace. So I just don't think that it's prudent to have one in that area. I mean, you can look at the previous one and it looked like totally different situation, you know, as far as room to navigate, parking, you know, there's no hills, there's that, you know, that kind of thing. I'm sure they have the same wildlife, but you know, where we live, I just don't think it's a good idea, you know, so I think that's what I was gonna, most of what my commentary is gonna be about.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Bill Coltman at 40 Delaware and 21 Cherokee. Our property is on both streets, but I park up on 40 Delaware and it's extremely difficult for parking, like the previous owner mentioned. And I'm trying to understand if the owner of the house has to be there 185 days, is he going to be there when he's renting out the house? If that's the case, there's no parking for the renter because he will be in that spot. So that's one question I had. The other question is concerning the people that come in for short-term renting. We've experienced that on Cherokee where we had people coming that rented out a house for a weekend for a bachelor's party, and they were coming into our yard because they didn't understand where the property lines were and using our parking and getting drunk. And actually one person fell and they had to bring an ambulance up to take them away. So I'm really concerned, you know, if it was long-term rental where, you know, there was a normal lease and you had liabilities and you had a deposit and all those things, I wouldn't be so concerned, but an Airbnb on 40 Delaware just doesn't make a lot of sense. It is extremely difficult to maneuver the switchbacks coming up and down. And then in the wintertime, it's also hard to get up there. You have to have a whole four-wheel drive or all-wheel drive to get up there. And so people are coming that don't have that. They're gonna get stuck or they'll run into other cars. So there's just a lot more to it than just, oh, let's open it up and see what happens. The neighborhood is very concerned about the fact that, you know, we've experienced, at least we have experienced that down on Cherokee, and I don't want to have to go through it again on Delaware. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name's Jerry Huntley. Oh, sorry. I live at 51 Delaware, right next door. And my biggest concern is what assurances I would have for like noise, all that stuff, because my house is literally 6 inches away from their porch. And I mean, I hear a lot of stuff that goes on. So I mean, it's just, if there's a lot of noise and stuff, I mean, right now he's doesn't cause any problems, but there have been neighbors before that have, you know, been pretty noisy at night. But, and also to build on what they're talking about, Public Works employees, they call that the Narrows up there, and because it's so tight, the road is really tight. And so anybody who comes up there they have trouble finding parking. And so if I'm not home, usually they park in my driveway. And so I had to call and have vehicles, the owners found and the vehicle moved. So, I mean, if somebody's not used to it, you know, that's one of the big issues is parking, and they just find the best looking spot to park in. And it would be kind of a bit of a problem for me there, but the biggest problem is the location of my house to theirs. It's right. They're both right on the property line. Then there's no fences or anything like that. And the previous owner, he thought that land didn't belong to me, and he started cutting trees down and stuff. So it's hard to tell where the property lines are and all that stuff. And so somebody from out of town who just wants to go milling around, you know, they can't, there's no fences or anything that says where they should be at. And so I don't know if there's any way to post, you know, like property lines and all that for the house, but those are my biggest issues is the assurances for noise and parking and you know, just staying where they're supposed to stay. All right, thank you.
Great, thank you.
My name is Rick Scholes. I live at 1 Delaware Road. I'm going to add to what he said, and that the applicant said that he has one parking spot off street. Yeah, we had another application for this a little while back who was parking in fire zone, no parking. It is a 1-lane road. The requirement code says it is off-street parking only for this, and I think the applicant.
Could you
said-
get a little closer to
I'm
the
sorry.
mic, please?
Code says that the parking is off-street once you get approval for this. The owner or the applicant has said that he's going to have one space. Currently, he does park 2 there. One of the vehicles is parked at the bottom of a set of stairs that accesses the house. Once there is no more parking on the place, that there are 3 spots, one that is on Allen, or excuse me, and former mayor owns, I'm sorry. Yeah. He says that there's, well, that's his parking, his land right up next to the street is probably about 4 feet away. So it is private property. That 4 feet is to the street. All the houses have off-street parking there, but there is not room for another. You only have one parking spot, the owner says, applicant, then when you're going to school, how do you, or when you're home, I should say, how do you put the visitor's car in a location? Where would that location then be? That's about all I have to it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi there, I'm Brent Weiner. Live at 50 Delaware with Tracy Kinsley. She's seated back there. So I am pretty much immediate neighbors with Peter. And I don't know if you all have seen pictures of the property up there or just drawings, but the way our house is situated is our house is kind of across the street. from Peter's house and just a little further down. And then our garage is across the street from our house. And it is right up against his property. And so we share, like, I guess it's called a garage bay with the cement bay that's in there. So we share a common wall. Our garage has been built and his has not yet. But that's where his one parking spot is in his bay. And then as the previous speaker pointed out, Peter will park his car sort of in front of his garage, right up against his stairs. The issue we've had is not so much from Peter, but some of his friends have done this. If they're parking in that second spot, their cars, the front of their cars will go in front of our garage. There's just barely enough space to kind of get a maybe like a regular size sedan in there or a small SUV in there. But if people don't know to park like right up against the stairs of his house and they just give themselves some rooms, the front of their car is going to go in front of our garage. And it is really tight up there. And for us to come out of our garage, we need all that space. So if people are like parked up there, can get to a point where make it impossible for us to get out of the garage. I talked to Peter about this yesterday. So I'm not telling you anything that I haven't already talked to him about. And I think, that's probably partially why he came in here and said, okay, let's do one bedroom and one parking spot. Because it probably impacts us more than anybody else. Quite honestly, just with the way our garage is situated relative to his property. So that is, if the council is going to approve this, then it would have to be one parking spot with like strict instructions that's it, and no other cars there. Because, and whether that's going to do the trick, who knows? People rent these places out and they're going to do what they're going to do sometimes. But that's my comment. I know there's been a lot of other comments. I don't have anything new to add beyond what I just added. That hasn't already been said by Peter or anybody else in this room. But I did want to bring to your attention this particular parking issue that will potentially affect us.
Thank you.
Chairman Delwich, would it be appropriate to just do a quick review for the interested parties on that there is a process in place in case there are violations? So that if somebody has a short-term rental and say there's people who are getting parking complaints or there's noise complaints, there's a process in place to manage that. And perhaps the planning director can go through that real quick so people understand that process.
Thank you, Commissioner Storm. Before launching into an explanation, we do have two individuals online who probably would like to speak on this item, but I'd be happy to do that. Let's start with Kendrick Cowdrey. Kendrick, I just saw you
Can you
unmute.
hear me now? Okay, sorry about that. I'm Kendrick Cowdrey. I live at 11 Delaware. I just want to say I concur with my neighbors about, the impact, not just in the immediate area of the property, but the whole neighborhood. This being a loop, as Pam mentioned before, and single lane, you often come nose to nose with another car. If you're not familiar where the backup spots are, it can be, a difficult situation. And so again, I concur with my neighbors, and I think that it's just not a real appropriate neighborhood for people unfamiliar with our unique issues. That's all.
Thank you.
Next on the list, I see Debbie Duran. You may need to unmute yourself. Perfect.
I just did, and thank you. Yes, my name is Debbie Duran, and I have owned 52 Delaware Road since 2001. And I also own a couple of other parcels across the street. And my concern is that there may be some folks that might want to rent that place thinking that they can go hiking behind the house that behind 49 Delaware Road. And if somebody gets hurt on my property, because as one gentleman mentioned, I believe it's the next door neighbor to 49, there are no barriers that dictate who owns the property. And so if somebody, and I have, furniture up there, and, it's just for my immediate people that I share that property with. I do not want to share my property with strangers, first of all. And then second, okay, so that's a liability issue as far as I'm concerned. If somebody goes hiking up there, they may run into wildlife. They may decide like, hey, it's cool, they get hurt, and then that's going to fall on me because I own that property. It's private property. So everything in the back is owned by other people. So that's my number one concern. Obviously, the parking is no joke up there. It's crazy. And a lot of people, if they think that they're going to be able to rent a car that is not capable of getting up or driving up the hill, they're going to get stuck down on the bottom, and they're going to have to hike up to that property. I have a four-wheel drive. I've always had a four-wheel drive since I've lived up there. And even with the four-wheel drive, it doesn't matter. Ice is ice. And, I've come close myself to hitting vehicles just driving down, from my house either way. So regardless, if I travel through Oklahoma, that's dangerous during the winter. And if I drive down Delaware, that's dangerous during the winter. Ice is ice, like I said, but more importantly, there have been, events where people have been driving. And if you take your eyes off the road for 1 second, you're going to find yourself going overboard, because there is absolutely no guardrails, which I think there should be. However, that's not my, my jurisdiction or anything like that to decide if, guardrails should be there or not. But I would say about 2 years ago, a gentleman was up there driving around in a truck, and he went overboard on my neighbor's driveway. So a friend of mine pulled him out. We had to winch him out. So a lot of people think that they can live up there, but they have to know how to live up there. There's a difference. That really is my concern. And then my parking is also across the street. And currently I am in my dissertation process in my doctorate of criminal justice with specialization in white collar crime. So I'm doing my research, which requires me to travel and evaluate different police departments and their body camera problems, or their advantages, whatever it might be. And so I have a parking area that is vacant at times, and I don't want people to think that they can use that unless they have my permission, because that's happened, and I've been caught up in crazy situations where I fly in, I go home and I can't even park. I've got to park down the street, haul my luggage home, which I should not have to do that. That is my property. So that's my concern. So I have insurance issues, parking issues, safety issues. The wildlife, I'll give you an example. There was a lady that was living there with her kids. And this probably happened about, I don't know, I'm going to say maybe 10 years ago. But she didn't know what it was like to live up there with the wildlife. And so one morning I was getting ready for work, and there were some folks up there. They shot the bear and they hauled the bear off. And in fact, that bear, I think now, it was the prettiest bear we had ever had, but I think that bear is in a museum somewhere now. So if people are not used to, you know, living in that environment, it's going to cause more than just, I would say, noise. We have a very quiet neighborhood and we enjoy that. And so we really don't want to have bachelor parties. I don't want somebody walking up, because where I live in adjacent to 49, if somebody, and you just never know who you're going to rent to. But it's easy for somebody just to take a walk and fall over into my front yard, and it wouldn't be good for them. And it surely wouldn't be good for me. So for me, it's a liability issue.
Hey, thank you. I think you've sort of summed it up. We kind
I
of have.
think, that's all I have to say. But that's where I'm at. The noise, we don't have a noise level. We all live, it's really our environment. People either live there singular or with their
Thank you.
partner.
You've summed it up. We need to move on. You've done well over 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you.
For people who need to speak.
Okay, thank you.
Mary Cowdery, 11 Delaware. There's maybe 3 more potentials of rental properties in our neighborhood. And do you all know Scott? What's Scott's last name?
Just,
Okay.
we're not going to
okay.
do he said, she said. Just
Okay.
make your statement, please.
Scott Hunt owns property. He started to build his own road and took away a mountainside. And I mentioned it to planning. They said, where? And I had to draw a picture for them to come see how he's deteriorated the road. And I'm just saying, I don't think things are monitored like they should be as far as city planning. We had to jump through hoops to rehab our house and pay extra money. And now we have to fight all of these various short-term rentals. So it's a neighborhood. It's for families. Okay.
I just, Pamela Howard, 325 Oklahoma Road. Can you hear me? Okay, sorry.
Yeah, and you've already spoken.
I
In
have, so-
fairness, you need to be very
I am,
brief.
I just, one little thing. So when they're talking about the narrowness of the roads and the safety, it is very true. I mean, we would like, as part of the consideration of one of your points up there is how this fits into the neighborhood characteristics. Okay, we have areas that are dangerous on the roads, especially that 341 Oklahoma Road. There is no guardrail. It is dangerous, to drive through there if you don't know it. And again, just, we have workers across the street. We worry every time that they're going to be falling down the hill. I mean, it's just, we would like to have a traffic study as part of the consideration for this, or any kind of rental thing. We'd like to have an official traffic study for our loop. Because we've had so many issues, and you can see we are so concerned about this, having these people driving up who don't know the roads and that kind of thing. So, okay, thank you. Appreciate it.
Look, you know, we're going around and round and round. And it's, you know, there's a point where if you have new information, fine, but we,
Bill Coltman, 40 Delaware. Down on Oklahoma where it makes these big gigantic bends. One renter ran into a car head on, deployed their airbags and destroyed their car. So that's what we're talking about, is people that don't know the road causing accident.
No, you know, look, we're going around and round. We know it's an unsafe road. I don't think we need to have more hearsay or more stories about that. And I understand. What I'm saying is the point's been made. It's a very unsafe road, and that's a challenge. And hearing 16 different instances isn't necessary. We get the message on that. So if you have something new to add briefly, you know.
Thank you. To better validate the issue, city.
State your name and
streets,
address for the record.
Rick Scholes, 1 Delaware Road. City streets 4 years ago did a change that street. Oklahoma and Delaware are a circle drive. City put up and changed signs and changed that to a one-way street. It didn't work and the signs were removed. So they do and have had problems, issues with that at an earlier date. Thank you.
Is there anybody who hasn't spoken who would like to comment on this? Is there anyone else in the? Okay. Okay, with that, I think the public comment is closed. The applicant would like to make any final statement. You're welcome to. Brief statement.
Yes, Peter Slat, 49 Delaware. Completely understand all the concerns. I want to ensure that this is not an invasive thing to any of the neighbors. That is my number one priority. Not to wildlife or anything. The only way you can do that is by having as much control over the situation as possible. Through that, just going through the points that were made, regulating the number of days rented. I don't know if the town can do that, maybe by like requiring, request like the Airbnb days that have been rented. I feel like there could be a system for that. The parking space, there's one parking space off street. The only thing I could do is to be as specific as possible, is that is the only place to park, nowhere else. And hopefully it could be monitored. I'm not sure if I can monitor it in some way. Traffic, I'm not sure about traffic. I understand that the road is very highly trafficked. There's about 1 million Amazon trucks and FedEx guys going up the road every day, and I hear them pass by. Our main rental months, we are anticipating mostly being in the summer, so winter driving conditions. Also want to avoid that. Don't want to put anybody in that situation, knowing that it is a dangerous road, and I've slid down the hill many times. So May to September, knowing that we could, possibly get snow in that by the off chance, but that is our intention of just summer. Wildlife, we get wildlife all through Manitou. I've seen the bears in town. I cannot control the wildlife other than warning people, giving them specific instructions to not engage with the wildlife. Noise to the neighbors. I apologize. I'm sure my neighbors have heard our kids screaming and stuff out of the windows. So I apologize for that. We don't have air conditioning at the moment. So windows are our main air conditioning, but noise to the neighbors is also a big concern of ours. And that's why limiting the number of renters to 2 to 4 people. And if we have to reduce that to 2 people, I would be fine with that, because honestly, I don't want any bachelor parties or major events at my house. It is my family's house, and I would like to preserve it. And I've put a lot of work into it and tens of thousands of dollars, and I would like to keep it forever and not have it destroyed. So I would never want any sort of party or anything going on up there. And then hiking off property, I think we can also mitigate that by maybe putting railings up and signs that specifically say like this is private property and we are not, and the owners are, you know, at this and this address. I think there's ways to mitigate the issues and the concerns tonight, and I'm willing to work with the neighbors and whatnot, but that's all I have to say. Thank you.
A question for you, as long as you're here at the table. Do you have another residence in Fort Worth? I'm a little confused. What specifically when are your 180 days when you say you're going to be living in this property?
Mainly, like I said, I think May to September would be around the areas that we would want to rent in. And just being, you know, due to weather, road conditions and whatnot, and kind of mitigating that issue. Yes, we do have residents with family down in Fort Worth that we, you know, stay with at the moment, and it makes it easy. Like I said, they help with our children while we have school and stuff. So our main rental months would be just during a few months of the year, probably not even the 180 days. And we would intend on spending the winters up here as we're avid skiers and outdoor people. So.
Thank you. Any other questions for the applicant? David?
Just to clarify, Mr. Solid. I thought I heard that you said you had lived in this house for 6 years. Is that? I must have
I've been a
misunderstood that.
Manitou resident for 6 years. I've lived in this house for about 3.
For 3,
yes.
Okay. Did you go around to your neighbors and explain to them what you were trying to do?
No, I didn't. Life is busy, and I should have, looking back now, I should have definitely
Yeah, that
engaged
was a
with my
mistake.
neighbors.
Yeah.
But I do want to let my neighbors know that I have personally taken into account all of the concerns before they've brought them up, and that is a big. We don't want to be invasive to the neighborhood.
Have you? Oh, sorry. Have you had conflicts or problems where the neighbors complained to you for noise or parking or anything?
Parking, when I first moved in, I felt like I didn't understand the parking. I've been away for probably half the time that I've lived in the house. And then also my wife and kids have been in Texas for a lot of that time. Just, you know, so I've split my time a lot. So in that time, I've had friends who have been, you know, traveling through or worked here also stay at the house. And there have been misunderstandings with me not being clear about the parking. And I do apologize for all of those instances. But yes, concerns were brought up to me in the past about that. As far as noise goes, it's hard. I completely understand the noise, because if there's a neighbor 2 streets down having, you know, like 6 people over, just being outside, it echoes in the mountains. It's hard, especially being a neighbor that's 6 inches away. So the noise, I don't know how to mitigate that other than not allowing large amounts of people in the house, and limiting that to, you know, 2 to maximum 4, but it's of people. But the house is a very small house, and 4 people in the house is crowded, and that's why I think I would actually limit it to 2 just to preserve the house and make sure it's comfortable. So,
Well, I'm familiar with Delaware for many years, and it's obviously even more Manitou than a lot of Manitou neighborhoods. And so the neighbors have to cooperate and get along. But so did I get this right, that none of your neighbors have come to you in these 3 years that you lived there with problems that you were not able to resolve?
I believe we've been able to resolve any issues and I've talked to my neighbors about the parking before. So I think that's easily mitigated by specific instructions with this is the only place you're allowed to park. And
Thank
if
you.
not, then you're in violation of the town and the neighbors and whatnot. So.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank
We're
you.
done. Any thoughts, comments?
Well, I think that this is a tough one just because, it sounds like there's space to do the rental, but it does sound like there's potential to be intrusive and affect the neighborhood and how it lives based on the closeness of the street, the parking. If the owner is willing to go down to only 2 people in 1 car as a requirement as part of the STR, that might make it more acceptable and more manageable for the neighborhood. I don't know. What does everybody else think?
Isn't there specific language in the ordinance about the character of the neighborhood?
Yeah,
Could we-
it's
could we hear
short-term
that
rental
again?
does not adversely impact the surrounding uses. And short-term rental does not encroach upon traditional neighborhood characteristics. That's the language.
Thank you.
I guess, I have 2 concerns. One is, I've lived in Manitou for 42 years and I won't drive up there. I did it once looking at a property, and if I need to see something up there, I'll walk up. It's terrifying when you don't know that the ins and outs of how that road goes. I can't figure out, if I go on Oklahoma around or I go the other way, it's just like, please don't let there be another vehicle coming the other way, because I don't know what to do. And that concerns me for having visitors from anywhere coming, and trying to navigate there. The other thing I'm a little concerned about is just the noise of proximity, lack of AC that people will be renting in the summer. When you're a tourist, you come in late at night, you're talking, you have to open the windows if it's 90 degrees outside. So I think that there are some challenges for this one. That's sort of my thoughts.
I thought Commissioner Storm raised the crucial point, or at least a crucial point. And Anna, you were going to tell us what recourse do neighbors have if there's some real bad behavior.
Thank you, Commissioner Armstrong. So if there is a code violation, we do an investigation through code enforcement. And it depends on the type of complaint, what action we would take. So if there was a concern about owner occupancy, we do have a software that monitors how often a short-term rental is rented through like 20 different short-term rental sites. And so that is a good indicator on how often a property is rented, and that may lead to justification for further investigation or not. If it's a noise violation, we do have a 24/7 hotline to take in complaints about short-term rentals, but there's also the police are present 24/7. They handle any noise violation anywhere in the city. If it's a complaint regarding trash, our code enforcement would reach out to the property owner, try to get it fixed, clean it up herself, or potentially fine the property owner if it was a repeat situation. So it depends on what is happening in particular, what action we would take. However, we do respond to code enforcement complaints very quickly. We're able to turn around a solution within a few days or so, depending on what the complaint is. And if we don't get compliance, then we do take those items to municipal court. So our code enforcement officer does have about 4 to 5 cases each month that does move forward to municipal court. So we take complaints very seriously, and a neighbor may call our office if they have a concern, or they may report a complaint using SeeClickFix, which is an online portal where they can take a picture of something, plunk down an address, and it goes directly to us. And we're able to, using that portal, comment on, yes, we received this. This is the action we're taking. We'll report back, things along those lines. So there's a number of avenues, and we do take complaints very seriously.
Well, what happens at any of these 40-odd short-term rentals when 11 o'clock at night, the noise ordinance in Manitou kicks in at 10 and somebody's playing music loud or just being obnoxious? What happens in that case? That's not a planning department or a code enforcement issue.
It would be police non-emergency line, and they would respond.
And any resident can request that the police investigate something, anything that seems to be them to be a violation at any time, right?
That's correct.
Yeah, okay.
As I look at the application and I listen to the conversations, I come away thinking that the application is not quite ready for prime time. I have a couple of inconsistencies. One is that it's unclear whether 1 bedroom or 2 bedrooms will be rented, and that impacts the parking. My second one is that there hasn't been a property manager identified. And one of our stipulations is the name, address, and phone number of the owner and I guess in this situation, it would be prudent and neighborly that everybody in the neighborhood have that property manager identified and know that they can count on them. So I'm inclined to table it or deny it tonight.
Yeah, I would support tabling it. I think the applicant has not done everything that he needs to do, but he has acted in good faith. And to talk about, identify that property manager, pin down the number of parking spaces and how many renters, and address any of the other questions that I would think would be very valuable to meet with your neighbors. They all seem like reasonable people. Obviously, everyone cares about the neighborhood, and it's a close, tight-knit neighborhood. Yeah, I would support tabling it for a future meeting.
I would say we could ask the owner if they're planning to have a property manager or not. They may be planning to manage it themselves, which may be why that's information wasn't included. And then I would ask whether the owner is willing to do 2 people limit, 1 car limit on the property, and then we could move forward with the application.
I think, I already did ask about the property management. It was in limbo, but depending on how this went, but and I think he has stated he could limit it to 1 vehicle, 2 people, but I go back to the criteria, and I think we have places in Manitou where it really works, and I just think this particular property, the proximity to neighbors, and this ridiculous road that none of us should ever have to drive, make it beyond, not appropriate. And so I would be in favor of denial, but I'd like to hear from everybody. Justin, do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Yeah, I'm kind of torn with this one. Definitely understand the traffic issues there. I think I would be in favor of a proposal that with the 1 vehicle, two person limit. I do think it's a little unfair to kind of put the whole neighborhood's traffic issues on this one applicant. I think there are ways to mitigate that, and frankly, you could have a neighbor that has to leave several times a day and come back to their house and cause more traffic than perhaps a tenant for a short-term rental. And I think generally what we have here is issues where there's miscommunication or lack of communication between neighbors, which doesn't help the process. That's not for us to discuss, though. But I think that's, causing the issue here ultimately. But I think I could get to, approving of this project if it was kind of pared down. But I do agree that it does seem like it's not quite ready. Maybe we could get there tonight with some other further assurances, but I think I'm inclined to approve it or vote for approval if it did get pared down a little, as was suggested earlier.
I think if somebody wants to move to approve with conditions, that's the way we address it. I mean, I believe we can restrict the occupancy and the number of vehicles, but he's already articulated that. I think we've already gotten that answer. Okay, well, I think if we approve with conditions, the conditions are
Yeah, I go back to the ordinance. I think this changes the character of the neighborhood. I think some of your neighbors already offered the suggestion, make it at least, a 30-day rental or more. That solves a lot of problems.
There's a strong echo this time, and it's understandable. The neighbors saying this could happen, this might happen. I feel that I'm concerned, and that's not how the code is written. The planning department has already verified, I understand it, that the applicant has met all the conditions. The applicant has shown that he's willing to make adjustments. When one immediate neighbor came to him and talked about the parking, he came in tonight with a revised solution for that. And his willingness to go to 2 people, 1 parking space, seems to me to move in the right direction. And when Justin raised the question of, for me, fundamental fairness, all the other STRs in Manitou have to meet the same requirements. All the other STRs are able to rectify any violations of good neighborliness by noise or whatever. So I said before I would be willing to support tabling this for a meeting to see if the neighborhood could work this out. I think it is possible to work it out. But I'm also willing to approve it based on adding these new conditions.
Is that a motion?
Okay, I'll give it a shot. I move that we approve STR 2304 at 49 Delaware Road based upon the planning department's findings that the request meets the review criteria for granting a short-term rental permit set forth in City Code section 18064.5 with the conditions that the renters, there would only be 1 renter at a time with a maximum of 2 people and 1 vehicle, and that the off-street parking space would be designated for that rental.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second
I'll
it.
second.
Okay, any more discussion? And then all in favor, raise your hand. Just let's see, for the record, we have Commissioner Storm, Commissioner Armstrong, and Commissioner Wilson voting affirmative. And in opposition? Okay, so it looks like we have a tie vote here. Just a second.
Good evening, Ruth Ann Goff, City Attorney. In this instance, a tie would effectively be a denial of that motion. Or that motion would fail. I should say.
So at that, we're done with this, or do we need to have some outcome other than a failed motion?
That would be ideal. So I guess the other two options would be to vote to deny the application because essentially no action has been taken because that motion to approve with the conditions did not pass. So denial, approval without conditions, or tabling would be your other option.
I'm not sure how to word it, but I agree with what David said, that this needs to get put off so that this man can communicate with his neighbors and they can iron out some kind of an agreement and then come before us again with a corrected agreement. This trying to correct stuff on the fly here in meetings, I'm not so sure about. So I would be much more comfortable in seeing this continued.
Make a motion to table it.
To table it, just to table it. Okay, I'll make a motion.
Just a second. Do we need a date certain for that?
Yes, please. So if you'll note in the motion language that you have before you, I believe your next meeting is June 7th of 2023. So when you, June 14th, apologies. So you would need to make your motion to that date certain, June 14th.
Where do I have that?
It's on the top of page 17.
Pardon me?
It's on the top of page 17. If you're
Thank
looking
you.
for it. Stephen,
Steve-
may I step in for you?
Stephen, do you want Gloria to do it?
No, I'm not finding it. Sorry.
Okay, go ahead, Gloria.
I move to postpone the short-term rental permit at 49 Delaware Road to June 14th, 2023 for further consideration.
I'll second it. Thank you.
Okay, if there any discussion or then let's vote all in favor of tabling this until the next meeting. Okay. So that's our decision here.
Did the motion pass?
Yes, it was unanimous, unanimous vote.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on, we have other business, notice of council action and updates.
Thank you, Chair Delwich. Just a few updates from the city council level. First was an action on an item that you guys heard a couple of months ago, 121 Ruxton, that was a rezoning from general residential to the downtown zone district. That was the Twin Springs building, that historic structure that had the 2 commercial suites and the 2 apartments above it. City council did vote unanimously to approve that rezoning, and we have updated the zoning map on that property. The other 2 items are related to city planning in a way. They were added to the agenda based on Commissioner Casey's request for just general updates and discussion happening at the city council level. One is regarding a Senate bill that is being considered at the house, I believe currently, or it's going to, it was axed. Okay. So it was related to land use control and specifically affordable housing. So at the state level, they had proposed that some new regulations that certain municipalities would have to follow in order to support affordable housing. Manitou Springs was not on the list of municipalities that would have to come into compliance. However, the Colorado Municipal League came out with a recommendation that cities that subscribe to CML oppose the bill. And so an ordinance was passed by the city council last Tuesday, formalizing, or not an ordinance, a resolution, I apologize, formalizing the opposition or their opposition to the Senate bill. The other item that I wanted to update the City Planning Commission on is that we did adopt a public engagement plan. And that wouldn't necessarily affect our land use items because those are our process is prescribed in code. But it would affect any special projects that the city was taking on. So like the library, the Hiawatha project, any trail improvements, things along those lines. And the public engagement plan essentially creates a level of consistency for how staff moves forward with engaging stakeholders and affected individuals, so that one process didn't go above and beyond while another one didn't go to that same level. So this really establishes a baseline for communication, how projects are communicated to the public, and what steps we take to get feedback. So I included that public engagement plan in the packet, but it is also online if you ever want to take a look. It's what we'll be using moving forward. And that's all I have.
Thanks. Any questions? Okay, then. We meeting adjourned. Ooh.